Cheers. Welcome back. Hello again. My name is Sam. Welcome back to my channel yet again. And today we are talking the September wrap-up. If you took a look at my shorts or follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you already know what the books are because I do my rapid fire wrap-ups there. But here is a little more in depth as to my thoughts on them and then what I read. I should mention that most of my September books were from Becca's Bookoplathon. Now I have my little board here next to me. These were the little cards and the dice and the piece that I used from my Monopoly game. More cards. So if you would like to see how my books were picked, I will put the playlist, because I did them in my shorts. I'll put the playlist wherever it goes up here. I think it's up here, but I could be wrong. Who the heck knows? We will find out when I edit. We started off the month with a Fae Love Story. This is a super cute teen romance. It is a much more successful Romeo and Juliet retelling than These Violent Delights, in my humble opinion. These two children come from families that own competing pho restaurants, and they've been told that their families hate each other, but they don't know why. And then the kids get paired up at school for their school newspaper. She is a really good artist and he's a really good writer, so then they go do like food reviews together. And I've said before, I love books about food, and you can't tell. It was really cute. I like the food aspect as always. The family drama is can be kind of fun, but you find out why, and you'll just have to read it to find out. It was a solid book. I liked it. So the second book that I read in September was A Scott Mess. This was one of the Kindle Unlimited books, and I was not disappointed. It did take me a little bit to get through, only because the dialogue was written with a Scottish accent. But this is about a couple who met, and they want to be married, and the families are going to meet each other. He comes from a family with three sets of twins, and then his betrothed and her sister are twins. So hilarity ensues. There is confusion as to, well, this guy, your betrothed soon-to-be husband tried to kiss me. Oh, but he couldn't have. Oh, you're a liar. And there was a lot of back and forth. So it's like there's 4 sets of twins in this book. What could possibly go wrong? It was fun. It was cute. It was silly. There you go. The next book that I read was oh my gosh, I just realized I haven't been talking about who the authors are. Oh my goodness. So A Fae Love Story was by Loan Lee. A Scott Mess was by Caroline Lee. I think it's Loan Lee. And then A Scott Mess is Caroline Lee. And then we come to Silver Swift by Natalie Lloyd. Okay. This was a middle grade novel, and the prompt, as you'll see in the playlist if you watch it, it was it's right here. It had to have like a color in the title, or in the book somewhere. So I picked Silver Swift. Like I said, it is a middle grade novel, and it is about a grandmother and a granddaughter and their bond, and then having one last adventure together before the grandmother loses her eyesight. It was super sweet. I really did enjoy it. The writing was very nice, and I think this is a story that a lot of kids would really enjoy. It's, there's some adventure, there's some family drama, there's some learning of accepting, the mother thinks her mother, which is the grandmother, is a little off her rocker and a little too eccentric, where she's very practical, and her daughter is kind of going down that road of more the adventurous eccentricities, and she's like, ugh, practicality. So it's just about learning how to come together and still be close, even though you have different personalities. Because I know a lot of people, like my friends who have kids, are like, your kids are not you, so don't try to make them you. And I was very lucky growing up. My mother was always like, what do you want to wear? What do you want to do? I was always able to go do my own thing. And then we take a hard shift from heartwarming middle grade to horror genre with Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesar. Ha! This book was a blast from beginning to end. Now, I am an avid consumer of horror. I kind of knew all the tropes. I knew all the twists and turns that this was going to take well in advance. That did not diminish my enjoyment of this book, however. It was still a lot of fun to read. The deaths and the gore, like it played like a movie in my head, and this could be easily adapted from book to TV or book to the big screen. It's such a joyous read. I had a blast with it, and a second one is coming out. I posted this on Litzy that I had read it, and this one girl's like, oh, I think a second one's coming out, and then she came back into my comment section and confirmed the second one is going to be called Friendo Lives, and I'm like, I'm here for it. I went through this guy's backlog, Adam Cesar's backlog, and I will be reading more of his books. Clown in a Cornfield was a blast. Okay, so the next book I read is another horror genre book, and I have it physically right here, and that is Zombie Haiku. Good poetry for your brains. This teeny tiny, this wee little book, I thought was so much fun. It is all in haiku. It is so interesting, and I am so happy to learn that there's a second one of these, and one for vampires and one for werewolves. So I'll be going through and reading all of these because these are a blast to read. So there's a lot of like pictures and gross stuff, like dead and all. So, okay. So this is a journal. Imagine that this is a journal. So we actually start the book off with, this is my poetry journal. And then this writing out here is the character who found this journal. And he's writing his final thoughts into it, or what he thinks will be his final thoughts. We don't really know until the very end when we see more from the person who found this journal. So this poetry book chronicles in haiku the story of how this man witnessed the zombie outbreak, got bit, became a zombie, and life as a zombie. Do I need to say more to sell this? It's so fun. It's so fun. If you don't like this, you don't like fun. I'm sorry. Zombie haikus. Perfect. It's awesome. Oh, and it's by, oh my gosh. See, Ryan, I don't know if that's Meacham or Meacham. Ryan Meacham. I believe this guy was actually a pastor, which is pretty fun. Okay, so anyway, the next book that I read, oh my gosh, this was not one that I picked. It came in my library, and I was like, oh, so once my library books, especially my audiobooks, come in, I kind of halt everything else, and like that's it, because I want to make sure I get it done before it's due back. So that's sort of what happened here, and I got The Dating Plan by Sarah Desai. Excuse me, oh my goodness. I have been such a sucker for these sweet, not even sweet. I've been such a sucker for these romances. If it has a cover like this, like look at, Talia Hibbert's book, look at Angie Hockman's book, look at Sally Thorne's books. If it has that kind of cover, I'm probably gonna love it. It had cultural differences, it had familial differences, second chance romance, it's people growing up in very different types of families. Like my boyfriend and we grew up very differently. So I sort of could relate to some of those aspects of this book, and it was very sweet. When they got the chance, like they actually talked to each other and communicated to each other, which is super important. And, when they come together, it's really great. It was a little bit steamy, not very heavily. Like if you're just dipping your toes into steamier books, this is not a bad place to like make that transition. Now, if you are into a lot heavier, steamier romances and you're a bit of a naughty Nelly, kind of like myself, and it doesn't bother you to read something a little more saucy, then I read The Sea Witch by Katie Robert. Now, I have had Neon Gods on hold with my library for weeks, and I still have a couple more to go. And then I saw this one was available on Scribd right away, and I was like, yes, listening to that, please and thank you. This is my first Katie Robert, and if I enjoyed this, I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy Neon Gods. So, what is this book? It's The Sea Witch. It is a BDSM super saucy retelling of The Little Mermaid. So we have Zuriel, Ursa, and I kind of didn't care about his perspectives. Alric. There we go. Alric. So, Ariel, Ursula, Eric. What I do like about Katie Robert is she does talk about consent. Everyone has to have consent for what they're doing. It was my choice. I did this. Don't you worry. It was my choice. Like, there's a lot of reaffirmation of consent, and that's awesome. I really enjoyed this book. It had good representation around what you should be doing. There was a lot of emphasis on aftercare and after a scene is done, and really taking care of one another. Of course, there's there's some family drama and my daddy is a kid. So I'm a little all over the place with this one because the steam and all that stuff is really good, but then some of the storytelling to bring it all together seemed a little disjointed to me. Maybe not so much disjointed as crammed together to just make sure this happens. So Zuriel, her father, Triton, is, sort of mafiosa, but she didn't know that he, was evil or bad, and then she was told, but then she believes it immediately, and it's just and then she confronts him about it on the phone, and it was she just blurts it out, and I'm like, you didn't confirm any of this, and, I mean, there's a better way to, so that kind of bothered me a little bit. It did get a little repetitive, even in the sex scenes, so I could have done with it, maybe, if the book was even just a tad bit shorter, and just maybe take some of those out, but I do love how they all end up in the end. I think that was fantastic. And then we move to the final book that I read for September, and the prompt was subscription box book, and this came from Once Upon a Book Club. Now, in my shorts, I'm going to be uploading all the gifts that I opened. There was 4 of them. This is A Betting Woman by Jenny L. Walsh. I love historical fiction. That's sort of my bread and butter. That's where it's what I reach for the most. And what I've been learning is the American frontier is one of my favorite time periods to read in. I didn't know that. I have not ran across many. So if there's any recommendations, please leave them down below. But A Betting Woman. This was a real woman in history. Jules Simone, a.k.a. Eleanor Dumont, a.k.a. Madame Mustache. Because as she got a little older, she got a little mustache. And that's okay. But she created a name for herself, and she didn't want her reputation to be tarnished. But then in the end, I love how she really just embraces everything. She was very much grab life by the balls and let's do this. And a strong woman, and I really loved it. In the beginning of the book, I was hooked from the very beginning. Then in the middle, it kind of took a dip. I was like, okay, I'm kind of ready for the next thing. And then she opens her first business in Nevada, and I was back into it. I was like, yes, this is what I want to be reading about. So when she's sort of her first journey to get to where she was, I was really into. And then when she got there and she becomes a croupier, and she's dealing, she speaks French. She's from New Orleans, but I never took French, and I am really bad at French pronunciation, so I still don't know how to pronounce 21 in French, and which will then become which is what we know today as blackjack. So this book is about this woman who brought blackjack to the gambling world, and she really made a big name for herself. She started her own business, and when she got to Nevada, I was like, yes, the beginning of the Vegas Strip, let's do this. And then she goes off and is traveling again. She was a muleteer for a long time. When she was more stationary, I was much more into her story. There are a lot of time jumps. So it was like, oh, and then this happened. And then all of a sudden, and then before we knew it, years had passed. And I'm like, but what happened in those years? I want to know what happened in those years. So it's more of like a general broad brushstroke of her life. It was a good book. It was really solid. I loved learning about the history. The setting was great. It's just those little time jumps. And I was more interested in the building of her business and the building of her game and her empire than when she was traveling. But that's just my personal opinion. And with that, we have wrapped up September, and I'm going to go read. I just started Kristen Hanna's The Four Winds, and I'm very excited about it. And I will talk to you all next time. Bye!